I decided. Peter's grandfather looked up from the television with a grunt of annoyance. Decided what? The ashes, I'm going to take them, sir. The old man's eyes darted to the cardboard box on the mantel over the wood stove. The box sat beside the 4 framed photos that had been lined up there for as long as Peter could remember. First one, his grandfather at 18, decked out proud in army gear on a doorstep, with the great-grandparents Peter had never met. Next, his grandfather getting married to the grandmother Peter could barely remember. The third was a photo of the couple beaming over a baby who turned out to be Peter's father. And the last was a picture of Peter himself, a big-eared little boy in a suit, standing between his mother and grandfather to the side. The 4 photos had always seemed to be daring you to believe their improbable stories. His grandfather's life held a family. His grandfather narrowed his eyes, and Peter knew that he was weighing his claim on the ashes. Who should have what was left of a man, the man's father or his son? Peter drew himself up taller. The old man swiveled his beat-up armchair, crossed his boots. He turned down the volume, leaving the game show host gesturally, wildly in silence. What are you thinking to do with them? They belong with my mother, her grave. Peter looked his grandfather in the eye, something he usually avoided because whenever he saw himself reflected there, he always came up short. He hardened his gaze. He owed this to his mother. Lately, he'd felt strangely guilty, as if she wanted something from him, and he'd been failing her. Getting those ashes next to her, that had to be it. The old man worked his mouth as if trying out an argument. Then he looked down to the arm of his chair and scraped at a scab of dried food with his thumbnail. And Peter knew he had won. Fair enough, his grandfather said. When are you going to go? Whenever school lets out, I guess. It'll be early this year, so kids can join the junior water warriors. A joke. Bunch of do-gooders prancing around pretending to be real military. Peter didn't feel that way. He agreed with Fuller that it was exactly the right thing to do. Repurpose the training, the equipment, and the workforce of the military to repair the damage done in the war. And the junior water warriors seemed like a good idea, too, enlisting kids to help clean the water. He bit his lip, though. He wanted those ashes. His grandfather pulled himself up with a groan and went to the mantel. But instead of picking up the cardboard box, he pulled a brown envelope from underneath it. This took him long enough. From across the room, Peter recognized the military insignia. Oh, they determined. He stopped and swallowed hard. Circumstances of... They did. You want to know? Peter started to nod, but the look on the old man's face froze him. His dad hadn't died a hero in combat. That much was obvious. Which they already knew. Otherwise, why the big mystery for 6 long months? He'd been hit by an enemy mortar 100 miles from his base, but that was all they'd been told. Not having a final answer somehow made it less real, and that was okay with Peter. No, I don't want to know. Maybe you do. Yeah, maybe you need to read this, 'cause your father died of stupid. He crossed to Peter and thrust the envelope in his face like a threat. You read what's in here, learn yourself a lesson. Peter pushed the envelope away. He died in the war, that's all. He'd already said that to everyone at school. He was getting used to saying it. People die all the time in war. No details needed. Suit yourself, don't read it then. But you hear me now. Don't get too thick with other folks. Yes, sir. Don't worry. I won't. Don't go soft. Got it? Yes, sir. I've got it. Peter walked to the mantel and picked up the box. It was heavier than it looked, but still it felt too light to hold all that was left of a big man. He tucked it under his arm and hardened his bicep around it. He crossed to the door. "I'd better get back to Vola's. It's getting dark." "Wait." Peter stopped, a hand on the doorknob. Maybe his grandfather was going to offer to go with him, to spread the ashes. That would be okay. Ever since he'd chosen to live with Vola, when his grandfather looked at Peter, it seemed he wanted to spit. Maybe on a trip like this, they could patch things up, get to know each other better. If he wanted to come along, Peter would say yes. But that wasn't it. His grandfather walked up behind him and slid something into Peter's backpack. "Take this, too." Without looking, Peter knew it was the envelope. He would throw it away later. He turned the doorknob, but his grandfather still wasn't finished. People are tricky. You have to watch all the time. "Yes, sir," Peter said as he opened the door to the cold, sharp air. "I'm watching all the time."